Welcome back everyone, I'm Michael, and today we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This post was created in 2020 in the relationship advice subreddit by a user named Illustrious Fox 8800. The post is titled, I, 26M, think my wife, 25F, is or was cheating on me with her cousin. TLDR, discovered wife's cousin sending offers to her. Her story checked out, but I'm having serious doubts about her honesty now. Update below original post. Alright, it's a long one, so bear with me. This situation happened about 2 weeks ago, and I've gone from fully trusting her to deeply doubting her. My wife and I met when I was 19, and we fell in love quite quickly. She had a 4-month-old child from a previous relationship. That father hasn't been in the picture since I've known her. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a father, but I have a genetic disorder I don't wish to pass on, so adoption was just great with me. Anyhow, we've been just like your normal family every day since then. We got married last year. She was never super close with her family, but she did have a pair of cousins she was always kind of close to, and I had lots of fun getting to know them. They seemed like decent people. She did mention that one of them, Max will call him, had, when they were like 12 and 13, tried to kiss her, but she ran off. I asked her if she ever told anyone, and she said she chalked it up to him being a stupid kid. We see him on Christmas every year, and he seems like a normal dude. I actually liked him as her family is a bunch of stuffed shirts and he's down to earth. Recently, they've reconnected and gone to a few family functions. We own one car, and since I needed it for work, he picked her up and drove her to these things. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary about this. They are cousins after all. Her behavior didn't make any obvious changes. However, randomly, as I was watching TV one night, she came in and mentioned that I had friended a girl from my place of work. I had accepted a friend request. We're a pretty open couple, and things don't usually offend us. For instance, she'll remark on an attractive guy and make some sort of a lewd remark, and I think nothing of telling her this woman was the new office hire. She didn't accuse me of cheating, but it felt like she was about to, which has never happened before. The reason I mention this is because I've read that cheaters accuse their partner as a projection or something. Anyway, these family outings were legit. The whole family posts pictures of them on Facebook, and my wife sends pictures from the outings. There were 2 of these events, and each time my wife came home, she was like a robot. Seemed normal, if not quieter than usual, but as she suffers from depression, she often gets cold every so often. When I asked her if she was doing alright, she chalked it up to that. Well, 2 weeks ago, she left for work, and as it was my day off, I puttered around the house, dropped the boy off at school, and came home to check my email. On Facebook, I saw that I had a message from her cousin. He and I had recently discussed going out to see a farm team baseball game, and I thought he was getting back to me. The message read, "I'd like to see you on your knees." I was confused as hell until I realized that my wife was still signed in, and it was her he was talking to. I wanted to kill him. I instantly rushed and read through their chat log, and it was filled with him creeping on her. While she was saying things like, "but I'm married," and "no, I'm married," these read like very thin no's, as if she was saying no because she had to, not because she wanted to. I was disgusted and absolutely floored by it. But since none of them mentioned anything happening yet and she was denying him, albeit kindly, I couldn't exactly say she was cheating. When she got home and our son was put to bed, I confronted her about the situation. She instantly broke down into hysterics and tears, saying things like, "I didn't do anything, I didn't know how to tell you, I was just hoping he would stop." Now, she and I both suffered childhood sexual abuse from family friends. We've both gone to years of therapy for it, and for that reason, we have very good communication skills when it comes to comfort and boundaries and how to express ourselves about unwanted advances. I love her, and I wanted to believe her and that he was just being a creep, but the way she didn't tell me and acted seemingly normal leads me to believe something else was going on. I told her that I believed her and asked her if I could message him to tell him to back off and how disgusted I am that they are cousins, or if she would prefer to tell him and handle it herself. She first expressed that she would tell him that I knew and not to call her, but her resolve cracked as she was confident this would just stop. I was furious about that, but didn't express it and told her that knowing she wasn't going to, I was going to give him a piece of my mind. This is my wife. If she's being harassed, I will end it, and if she's not being harassed, she's cheating on me. So I messaged him. He saw it but made no reply. The wife says I should have let her handle the situation, and I told her there was no way I was going to keep quiet in the face of this. She seemed to understand and expressed in the end that I was probably right to confront him because she didn't know how. All seemed to return to normal, but 3 days later I came home and she was crying. I asked her what was wrong and she said, "It's Max. You should have let me handle it. I messaged him yesterday and he won't talk to me." We had the conversation again about me not sitting idly by when somebody is harassing my wife. She gave me a look. It wasn't much and it was only for a second, but it gave me the impression that she didn't consider it harassment. We ended the discussion in agreement that I handled it how any man would handle it. 2 days later, I was coming to bed late, like 2 a.m., as I was finishing up some work. I heard her on the phone with somebody kind of chuckling. This is not normal. She told me it was her mom and had something to do with our kid's birthday, which I didn't buy, but at this point, I've begun playing stupid so I can observe the situation from a place where she feels comfortable. The next day, she was crying again, and at this point, I've really had it. She's been unstable for 2 weeks now. When I asked her if this was about Max again, she said she tried to call and apologize for not handling the situation herself and that he still isn't talking to her. I admit it, I snapped. I told her that either he was abusing her or she was cheating on me, and I caught them. On the couch tonight, obviously. I wanted to believe her, but I'm not a moron. I'm essentially lying here with my finger on the button waiting for some solid truth, because if this is what it's feeling more and more like, I'm about to go 95,000 megaton nuclear on the both of them. Sorry for the length, I just don't know what I can do from here on out. Edit, thanks for all the input. She goes to work in 6 hours. I will apologize for my outburst and ask her to sit down with me and talk tonight. It's Sunday and our son typically stays the night with my parents every other Sunday. I'm not proud of it, but I feel it's in my best interest to do some snooping. If I find nothing, we will discuss what happened, when it started, what I can do to help her, and what we ought to do moving forward. I love her, and the idea that she is being harassed by somebody who is supposed to love her breaks my heart. However, if I do find something sordid or learn that she was complicit in any way, I am done with the relationship that instant. I don't believe in marriage counseling in instances of infidelity, and even if I did, there is no way I could look at her the same again. It was incest. Will update. Update. So I didn't sleep at all last night, and when she woke up, I made breakfast. I told her I shouldn't have blown up and that we should probably sit down tonight and talk about things. She agreed as if she wasn't even upset to begin with and said she knew she had probably been acting badly. I told her that the sort of harassment she was dealing with was infinitely more difficult because he is a member of the family. She just seemed to agree with me. I wasn't going to snoop, but so many people on here told me I ought to, and not wanting to be accused of not taking the advice I asked for, I decided to go through with it and check her emails. With the way she was acting this morning, I had fewer reasons to be suspicious, but at this point, what the heck? And I did just that. The level of disgust, hatred, and anger I feel cannot be expressed properly, and there will be a divorce. There was one email entitled Yummy, and upon opening it, I found a picture of her cousin with on his face. The back and forth messages included him describing his encounters with random gay men. They made reference to past sexual encounters they had together, complete with one picture of a strap-on dildo captioned, "I still have our old friend." Then I read some absolutely disgusting filth talk between them where she was behaving in a very dominating way and insulting his penis size. Looking at the dates, I realized that this was from a year ago. As I continued to read, I was able to figure out, at least from how it read, that they used to hook up frequently but stopped after we got married. We were together for several years before we got married. Later, she started using the "I'm married" excuse, but it reads like that's just a kink of his, to be told he can't touch her anymore, which he probably enjoys. I'm raising her damn kid, and she does this to me. I've wasted the last 6 years changing my work schedule and not taking better paying jobs because I need hours where I'm able to watch him. I went outside and sat on the front porch, called my brother over, and after explaining to him the entire situation, asked him to take my gun from me for the time being. I'm not a violent person, I never have been, but in the state I'm in now, I'm fluctuating between wanting to kill him and wanting to kill myself. I'm not going to, but I feel like I'm headed for a breakdown, and I can't trust I'll behave rationally. After this, I'm packing up my clothes and checking into a hotel. These conversations have all been printed, I've sent copies to myself, and when I have time, I'm digging for more dirt. Bought a pack of cigarettes, stopped smoking 4 years ago. And Joy, I have to make an appointment at some STD clinic because according to these vile back and forths, a part of his thing is having unprotected sex with these men. My soon-to-be ex-wife has a device, and as such, I've never once in all these years worn protection with her. So now I apparently have months of biting my nails to look forward to, as I understand AIDS tests take months. I know his work schedule roughly because I used to work for the same company he does, so maybe before checking in and composing myself, I'm just going to drive down to see his wife, evidence in hand. There's no fixing this, there's no therapy, no hope, nothing positive, and I don't care to even entertain an apology. I'm divorcing the whore and she will get nothing. I hate life right now. I don't feel depressed or sad, I haven't cried, I just have this hot ball of rage in my chest that the cigarettes only briefly cool. I can't be near her or him. I know I said I'm not violent, but man, I really want to beat the piss out of both of them. One user named Tripping929 said, I don't blame you for being suspicious. This is messed up, but at least you guys have tried to handle it through therapy. I'd keep researching, but at some point, if you have no evidence, then see what your wife was hoping would happen. Why does she feel the need to preserve the relationship with a creep? Another user named Mega Medium said, apart from the obvious DNA thing, this is why incest is illegal and largely considered to be abuse. It's possible that they've been carrying on a completely consensual affair for years, but it could also be that the family tie really messes with her head and she can't reconcile the cousin that she's been close with all her life with the man that also, at the very least, harasses her. You also mentioned that she wasn't close with the rest of her family when she was younger. That could be a factor, like she didn't receive a whole lot of familial affection growing up, so she put up with his creepy advances in exchange for having some sense of family. Obviously, I'm doing armchair psychology with only a few paragraphs of the story to go off of though. You're more familiar with the situation than any of us, so ultimately it's up to what you think. What I'd suggest is to have a serious discussion about all this without framing it as you accusing her of infidelity, even though that would be what you're looking to find out. If she's already in a lot of distress over this situation, which sounds likely, adding accusations won't help get to the bottom of it all. I'd recommend some form of therapy for her or for you two as a couple. User Mad DDKB said the following in their comment. This is a really crappy situation. From her side, it's hard to accept when someone you love or like is doing something wrong, so I think that would explain why she is so upset. From your point of view, the Facebook friend thing would definitely be a red flag for me, but I think that his reaction to you confronting him shows that they didn't have any kind of romantic relationship to hold on to. Just a platonic one he wanted to take too far. I commend you for showing restraint. Another comment left by a now deleted user said, I haven't read all the comments, but I will say this. You're absolutely right to be outraged, and leaving her is the right choice. Outing him in this situation is also the right choice in my opinion. The only thing I'd say is to try to remember the child in all of this. The child had nothing to do with the actions of your wife, and although I don't know how your relationship is with him or her, remember that completely cutting them off is going to cause damage as well. Like it or not, if you did adopt the kid or have been the kid's father for the last 6 years, you're essentially the only father the kid's ever known, and ripping that away without explanation or even an attempt to maintain the relationship may be something the both of you regret in the future. Take it from someone whose parents divorced when they were 2 years old and whose dad makes no effort to be in their life. I wish I had a dad who cared at all. Remember the child. This entire thing is so disturbing. Cheating is one thing, cheating with a family member is another thing, cheating with a family member who frequently sleeps around with even more people is the bottom of the fucking barrel. If I was in OP's shoes, I would also end the relationship. There is nothing to maintain or salvage here in my opinion. As the last comment said, the child is the one who will suffer the most here, but I wouldn't feel comfortable raising a kid with those other two around. OP's wife really needs therapy. As another user suggested, she may have faced abuse or trauma earlier in her life, which may have created an illusion that the disgusting advances from her cousin were out of love. The whole thing is just disgusting, and the thought that this incestual affair may have been going on for years makes me want to puke. 3 days later, OP provided us with an update. Edit, my stepson is not a product of incest. He and his biological father look exactly alike, and he had to take a paternity test to establish child support. When it was established he was the father, he vanished and has only been heard from once in the last 4 years. The last couple of days have been a regular roller coaster for me. TLDR version of my original post. I essentially discovered that my wife is and has been cheating on me with her own cousin Max for years. Actually, by the length of time this seems to have been going on, it might as well be seen as her cheating on him with me. Okay, I went to a lawyer initially, and after that I went straight to Max's home where I spoke with his wife. She was brokenhearted as one might expect and disgusted over the incest. We sat down for a bit and I told her also that he was bragging to my wife about how he was having unprotected sex with random internet men and that there were pictures of him with on his face that he was sending my wife. She insisted on seeing them despite my advice not to, and she was broken. He was bisexual and was always found to be chatting up random guys. She said she allowed him to go out every so often and see a man if he felt he had to get it out of his system, as she put it. She was under the impression that he hadn't done this in well over a year. When this was over, I stayed the night in a hotel where I still am and talked with my mother, brother, and father. My mill called me, begging me to come and talk about this, saying that I must have made some mistake. It's all voicemail, I never picked it up. My wife tried calling me a dozen or so times. I didn't answer. She sent no texts. I assume she knows I've been documenting things and I doesn't want to give me any more ammo. It's what I would do in her place. At the end of the day, I called her and kept it brief, saying I would talk to her the next day. When I eventually came home, she was a warbling mess. She tried to hug me and I told her that it was over. She insisted she never cheated on me, that I must have taken something the wrong way, and that Max's wife must be spreading these rumors because they hate each other. It is at this point that I realized that my wife thinks I heard about this from someone else. She doesn't know I discovered their affair myself. It's then that I show her the papers I have, the pics of him with semen on his face titled Yummy, the picture of a huge strap-on dildo titled Our Old Friend, her speaking to him as if she is some dominatrix type, saying how he has a small dick and real power play type stuff. At points, she was telling him to send her pics of himself after these men were done with him. Real stomach-churning stuff. I'm not a prude either. I engage in a lot of really kinky stuff, so it's not like she's dealing with an uptight hubby who isn't open sexually and went out for those reasons. But anyway, as soon as she realizes that it was me who discovered this and told Max's wife, she goes from being weepy and sad to explosively angry, complete hysterics. You should have talked to me first. She's all over everything, telling everyone. This is going to ruin me. You knew she would do this. I told him to stop texting me like that. At that last statement, I absolutely exploded. I told her that I had just finished reading a year's worth of texts and emails, and not once did she ever tell him to stop. I called her a f***ing degenerate, said that we both probably have AIDS now, and she crumpled in on herself. Couldn't respond, just crying hard. Even still, I told her that we were getting divorced. I then called her father and told him to come to my house because she really shouldn't be alone in that state. I returned to my hotel room and saw that Max's wife had been texting me. She had done some intense digging on her own and found discussions about sexual encounters they had from 2010 on MySpace. She told me early on in our relationship that he once tried to kiss her at 13. Well, they were actually at around then or during a time where MySpace was still widely being used. I'll admit it, seeing it went on that far back was finally what broke me. I'm not big on emotional displays, but I broke down crying in front of his wife. She cried too. When that was over, I took her to the lawyer I was seeing, and now one of his partners will be handling her divorce. Through all this, Max has been panicking and crying, trying to find out where his wife is, trying to talk to me, still after all this evidence, trying to ensure this is all some big misunderstanding. It turns out that Max and ex-wife live in a house owned by Max's parents, and they have come down hard against their son, telling him he cannot stay there anymore, and apologizing to their DIL and saying she's welcome to stay with their grandchild in that house for as long as she wants. He's basically disowned. Max's father even got it in his head somehow that Max was molesting my wife as a child, and that is why she is doing what she is doing today. She is his favorite niece, basically a second daughter, so Max in effect is on the lam because his old man wants him dead. My father, unprompted and wanting to help me, assured me he'd pay my hotel for the week. Today, I told my boss point blank, no filter, exactly what's happened and that I am taking 2 weeks to sort my life out. He remarked about how shitty his divorce was and told me to take whatever time I needed and that he'll just tell everyone on the floor I've got a sick parent or something, which was sweet of him. Lying down in my hotel room now, missing a stepson I'll probably never see again. I raised him for 6 years, changed his diapers, bottle fed him at 3 a.m., took time out of work when he was sick. Waited on him hand and foot after a nasty fall that broke his arm so his mother could sleep because she was working in the morning. The rest of this world could burn away to Ash and I wouldn't blink or care, but the thought of never seeing him again rips away at me like nothing else. I need therapy. Gonna take a hell of a lot of talking to get through this. I'm not a suicide risk, so no worries there. I'm an atheist, so this is the only life I've got. If I end it, that's it, lol. Talking to my lawyer on the phone later, and we'll be meeting up with Max's so again because apparently there's more I don't know. Got a doctor's appointment tomorrow and then 6 damn months of waiting for results. Thanks for the support, everyone. If more develops, I'll do another update. A throwaway account in the comments said, as far as cheating stories go, this is quite unique in its details. I am so glad that you were decisive and knew exactly what to do. It looks like all you're going to need is time to heal. You are very lucky because some BS are really broken during the confrontation phase. They just give up and want their old life back. You are really wise. You knew nothing was coming back. Good luck and be well. You've got this. MySpace, no wonder they kept it a secret for so long. Another user named CShake420 said, you should hook up with Max's wife when all this blows over. To this OP said, well, since you mentioned it, no, we were at a low point both talking about HIV and STD tests we're both gonna have to get. We're both under the impression that HIV tests take 6 months to get results. I made the joke, so I can't even go out and get a revenge lay without possibly killing someone. She just shrugged. Well, whatever you got, I got. We're basically f***ing already anyway. I took a deep breath and did not take the opportunity, changed the subject, and it was never raised again. She's doing everything she can to hurt Max right now. If I had sex with her, she'd probably tell him the first free second she had, and right now I'm the victim in everyone's eyes. I can't muddy the waters as much as getting laid would chill me the f*** out right now. Another comment said, sweet Jesus. It's stories like this that give me zero hope for humanity. I was just thinking earlier that you never really know someone. I'm so sorry you had to deal with this, OP. The only plus side, as someone previously mentioned, is that you are still so young. Yes, you wasted some years, but it wasn't your whole life. As for the kiddo situation, I would be willing to bet you could get some visitation or something from the courts if you show them documentation of the current situation and they take into account the time you have raised your son. You will get through this. I wish you the best of luck. This was written by user My Brains Broke. Then user Top Notch Dude said, you are unbelievably strong and resilient. Traits you probably learned at a young age due to the abuse. I see it. You'll figure this out by taking the right steps, and you have already done that. If you can't sleep, don't be afraid to rely on mild sleep medications for a brief period of time. Reach out, go to therapy, and start writing down a list of what you want for your future. Specific things like traveling to X country, owning a home, going on a first date with a nice person when you're ready, etc. In no time, you'll start scratching things off your list. You're on the right path. And I mean this without a stitch of spirituality since I'm also an atheist. A few days after the update, we got yet another update from OP. This one is exceedingly long. I'm getting out all of my thoughts and, well, there are a ton. The TLDR bullet points: I will get weekend custody. My marriage was a sham cover for an incest affair. HIV test is negative. Working together with ex-wife for a quick divorce. Neither of us is wealthy, so all we have to divide is 2 checking accounts and utility bills. We're in agreement on what belongs to whom and who should pay what. Falling for the other survivor, but not acting because apparently I'm stupid enough to catch feelings in a time like this, but not stupid enough to ruin myself any further by pursuing her. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the gold, the hugs, and the support from this community. I think I got the advice and input I was looking for, and at this point I'm just doing another update so I can sort out my thoughts in a semi-public way so random strangers can call me out on my bullshit. I do listen, and I do take what everyone said to heart, or at the very least into consideration. The link to my original post is above, but I'll give you a TLDR anyway because, like the first 2, this will probably be quite lengthy. A few weeks back, I found a text of a sexual nature on my wife's FB from her cousin. She claimed this just happened and she wished he would stop. I messaged him never to speak to her again under the pretense that this had been an unwanted advance. Turns out it wasn't. Turns out they've been involved for about a decade. Divorce happening. Okay, well, a bunch has happened since the day or 2 days since my last update. First, the good news, I got my HIV rapid test and it came back negative. I thought it would take days or months, but I literally learned in the same visit. I am going to get tested again obviously in the next few months, and for now I am going to live my life as if I do have it just to be extra careful. Max's wife, who I'll be calling Sherry from now on, accompanied me for support. Her own appointment is in 2 days. Well, I had the first long sit down with my soon-to-be ex-wife. We had an understandably explosive conversation earlier in the week, and we've talked sparsely in between. I left this out, but I've been calling her at my son's bedtime to say goodnight to him. At the moment, he is under the impression that I'm just working a lot. I plan on telling him the truth in the following days, or at least a version of the truth that is good enough for a 6-year-old. Reconciliation was never on the table. She knew this and didn't try to push it, which I was thankful for. Her reasons shouldn't concern me. They can't benefit me in any way. However, giving in to my emotions for the moment, I asked her to be truthful and tell me how long it's been going on and why, or if I did something that would push her to this. She looked like she had been crying on and off, but she was fairly calm while talking with me about it. By how candid she was, I can tell it's probably the truth, and she's somewhat relieved to be talking about it in a weird and f***ed up way. Long story short, she's the instigator. She didn't say as much, but she's in love with him and they aren't together because obviously of the situation. I'm learning now that I'm basically the equivalent of one of those sham wives that gay men would marry so they could seem normal. That's pretty crushing. She insists she loved and loves me, but I don't believe it, nor does it matter anymore. My life for the past 6 years was a lie, probably just a cover for this bullshit. I don't know if I even know what real romantic love looks like, and that's got me more than a little up. She looked hurt seeing me hurt, but I don't know if it was real, not that it matters anyway. The important thing we discussed was my stepson and what we will do moving forward. Before I could say anything, she told me she wouldn't oppose something like weekend custody and would sign that in the divorce. I honestly think she is extremely remorseful about how this affects him. She said a lot about how I am his father, his only dad, and taking me away from him would be so damaging. We're going to tell him the bad news in a few days. Tomorrow or today, whenever I post this, I'll be taking him to the zoo. I was thinking of telling him after that, but he loves this zoo and I really don't want him thinking of his parents' divorce every time he sees it. It's tearing me up having to think of the best way to scar my child for life. I'm thinking about how to make it positive, like telling him how in my new apartment he'll have a new room and he can paint it how he wants and help me get stuff for it, make him feel like he and I are a team, like a way to make this terrible situation fun. We aren't wealthy, so basically we're just going to keep what we have in our already separate accounts, divide up the remainder of our utility bills in a fair way, and just get the divorce. We discussed a meeting at the courthouse and having me file for divorce right in front of her so she can be served that minute. I want it over as fast as possible, and seeing as she's giving me the only thing I want, refusing the idea of child support, you didn't make him and you didn't do this to him, I'm impressed that she seems to at least want to make amends for this. Maybe she just wants weekends off to screw her cousin, but honestly, as long as I get to remain a dad, I might as well have one today. In other related news, yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever I post this, I went to visit Sherry, Max's soon-to-be ex, to see how she's holding up. When I arrived, Max's parents were there and were surprised to see me. I got a hug from my wife's aunt, and she was crying and apologizing so much it almost made me cry. She was under the impression that I was never going to see my son again, which really upset her because, and I didn't know this, but she used to love watching me play with my son at family gatherings. Basically, they are going to continue to allow Sherry and the baby to stay in their second home for as long as they like. Under the circumstances, Max will not be allowed there anymore and is basically disowned at this point. I'm not sure this was mentioned before, but the family seems to have gotten the idea that Max my wife and that this is some kind of abuse or Stockholm syndrome and call me an asshole, but for the sake of my son's stability, I will do nothing to correct them. If letting them believe this allows my wife to live at home with her folks and not have them fight over this in front of my boy, then I will omit this. Sherry is a mess as one would expect. She has moments of being okay, followed by tears, followed by anger. The more she talks about subjects not related to this, the calmer she gets. Her family is going to be paying for her to see a therapist, and her brother is coming to the state for a week to be with her. Her mom is basically moving in with her for a month after that to try and help her cope. I got to feed her daughter today. Such a cute kid, and it melted away my anxiety for a little while. Last night, my friends and I went to the movies and I asked her if she'd like to come along. I'm glad she came along, but I've also realized that I either need to put some distance between Sherry and me, or I need to talk with her about what I think is happening. Nothing has been said really, but she's casually touching me, which is something we never did prior to this. I had a tension headache and mentioned a knot in my neck, and unprompted, she started rubbing my shoulders. Also unprompted, during my test when the doctor left the room, she held my hand. It's probably all just me overthinking things due to my rejection, loneliness, and wanting to feel accepted, but I'm infatuated with her. Whenever I'm not obsessing over all the terrible things going on in my life, I find myself thinking of her in a romantic light, and while it's probably not healthy, feeling anything positive is preferable to feeling nothing but misery and doubt. Again, maybe I'm reading too much into this and I'm mistaking her emotional support as something more than it is because my mind is messed up, but she's acting toward me now how past girlfriends and even the ex-wife did before I officially started seeing them. I mentioned in the comments that I was trying to lighten the mood with my dark humor and said something like, I can't even go out and get a revenge lay without the possibility of killing someone, referencing my HIV fears. And her response was to bring up the fact that if I am infected, by default she is most likely infected too, and that since our partners were sleeping together in a gross way, it's like she and I were already having sex. There were a few moments after that and a look which I took to be an invitation, but I changed the subject. I should be thinking about more important things, but I'm getting distracted by this. Part of me, the smarter part, knows that a foundation like this is horrible, and acting on it might spell disaster for our upcoming divorces. On the other hand, I do have a real mental and physical attraction to this woman, one I'm 75% sure is mutual, and I fear that not acting will make her think I'm not open to this at any point and she'll move on and I'll lose another person who makes me happy. If anybody has an answer for this, goddamn help LOL, but huge digression aside, I still feel like I'm on the verge of a nervous breakdown, but the divorce seems to be going favorably for me. I will still be a dad. Oh, and where is Max in all of this? Nobody really knows, but he was couch surfing the first 2 nights with friends out of state. He's called Sherry like 3 times since she went nuclear, but that's it. A user named UB1 Kenobi said, wow, thank you for the update. In regards to being mutually attracted to the other spouse, I suggest you guys not act on it, but honestly talk about the underlying feelings there. Give yourself and herself time instead of jumping into another relationship though. You both have a lot to sort through, divorce, feelings, etc. Is she going to seek therapy? Are you going to seek therapy? I think that would be beneficial for both of you as well. I'm happy that you still get to be a dad to the little guy. Again, please seek therapy for yourself and possibly for your little one. At least this will help you find a way to tell your boy about it with ease, despite the bad news. Another user named Nat20comp said, good to hear an update, man. It seems everything is going pretty smoothly. Just be there for Sherry too, romantic or not. She needs somebody who actually understands what she's going through. Honestly, it feels like you two need the support of each other. I don't think many can say that their spouse was cheating on them with their actual cousin. Gross. Stay hopeful. OP saw this comment and replied with the following. I'm taking her grocery shopping tomorrow. She's also going to finally have a sit down with Max as they haven't seen each other since day 1. I recommended they do this in a public place as he's been unstable since. He's contacted her very little and seems more concerned with himself being exposed than what he did. In his words, he thought there was an understanding where he could see other people, and while that was true, I guess the stipulation was no women. And I suppose no cousins was something she didn't think she'd have to ask. Normally, I'd offer to go with her to make sure she's okay, but he also wronged me and I don't want to see red and lunge when I see him. What will most likely happen is I or a friend will drop her off wherever she is meeting him and wait somewhere until she's ready to go. She's like me, there is no reconciliation on the table. Sherry was willing to look the other way for his other indiscretions, but incest makes her sick. They've got a daughter and she's now wondering, since family isn't something that will stop him and he's a deviant, if it's not that much of a leap to assume to be the next step for him. Whatever she and I are, I'm glad to be that. Her being around has more or less forced me to take my pride into consideration. Thus, I'm not a weepy slug right now. I don't know what it is, but if I have somebody to help through their issues, mine don't bother me as much. User Hungry Caveman 21 said, I have a rule. No attempt at a relationship for at least 6 months after one ends, especially if it ends badly. If I were you, I might consider breaking that rule. Both of you know the pain involved and both seem patient, even more so with the triggers involved when they happen. Both of you seem family minded. I understand the DNA thing. I have a genetic kidney disease. They already failed, and I have a great transplant. But I wanted 6 or 8 kids and got none, thankfully. Anyway, play it like you feel it, but it sounds like a good match. There is a country song called God Bless the Broken Road That Led Me to You, something like that. I'm a classic rock guy myself. I'm not sure if I missed it or what, but I find it crazy that OP's ex-wife is going to get primary custody of the kid. If anything, it should be her that only gets the weekend custody. Again, maybe I misunderstood or missed something, but why is the cousin keeping the kid? I still think this woman is terrible, but respect for not going after child support. The line from OP saying that the situation was more like his wife was having an affair with him rather than with her cousin is insane. It's the truth, but it's still absurd to think about. And the fact that this woman still loves her cousin is just beyond me. I don't even know what to say to that. I'm glad that Max is getting disowned though. I hope his life just gets worse and worse. As for the possibility that OP may end up with Max's ex, I don't really have an opinion. If I had to speak in absolutes, I would say to avoid having that relationship. But then again, I do think there's a world where the two can live happily together. After another few days, OP gave us another update. I don't know how many of these updates I plan to make, as I've stated before in my previous posts. Typing all this out in like my therapy, my way of sorting out my thoughts and getting feedback helps me to think through it better. The last update is here and it contains links to the previous updates and the original. Well, today's the day we've decided to tell my son about what's happening moving forward. This is not a talk that either of us is looking forward to, but it was inevitable. I spent a little time on the phone with my STBX last night and her tone changed, something I wasn't expecting. At first, she seemed resigned to divorce and didn't fight me on it. On the phone, she was in tears at points, trying to explain away this relationship with her cousin. She's trying to say now that nothing physical has gone on between them during the years she and I were together, only random dirty texts. The storm is coming, I think, because now she says she ought to have my car because I work 20 minutes from where we currently live, and she works an hour away. She's saying it's needed because if she has our son all the time, she's going to need something to get to work. Honestly, this old rust bucket doesn't have but 2 good years left in it, so I've been contemplating just forking it over and getting a new car as I'm going to need a new one anyway. But I also fear that if I start bowing to stuff like this now, it's going to be my entire life. I've also come to realize that I really don't feel like leaving my apartment. She announced that she was moving in with her folks, so I think I might just wait until she's gone, which I saw on FB will be in a week or so, and then just talk to my landlord. Due to COVID, he's had trouble filling some of his units, so he might welcome me sticking around. Had breakfast with my dad. He approached the topic lightly, but he's essentially telling me I ought to hold off on writing anything out that would obligate me to stay in my stepson's life. He's not dismissing my stepson. He always makes time to see him and spoils the hell out of him on Christmas and birthdays, even stops by with random toys. My point being, he's a proud grandpop. His reasoning was that I should wait to see how my STBX behaves and if that seems conducive to what I want in my life. He told me that I passed on my chance to go to school to become a family man and that nobody in the family would hold it against me if I decided I didn't want to be a father anymore. While they all love my son, they don't want to watch me fall on your sword because you feel we'll judge you and you tie yourself to that crazy family for life. More or less, they'll support me no matter what I do. Maybe after I consult my therapist, who I start seeing in 3 weeks, I'll feel differently, but at the moment I'm adamant about remaining a father. After that, I took Sherry out to meet with Max. I didn't go along with her. Had I done so, he might have a few fewer teeth and I'd have charges. So I basically just hung out in the Sonic drive-thru, listening to music, buying a new drink a couple of times to justify my being there, and waiting for her to text me to be picked up. When that was over, she was a bit worse off for the experience. He's blaming my STBX for the fact that things didn't end years ago and claimed that the guys he said he was having crazy hookups with were made up and part of some dirty story thing he and my STBX did. Assuming he's being truthful, it was just the one guy who is his boyfriend, I guess, and he made up the rest as part of this dirty story thing. Sounds like bullshit, but honestly, for some reason, it seems true to me. Sherry was quite devastated, mostly by the fact that he looked like he hadn't slept in days, didn't acknowledge his daughter, and hadn't said anything about her until she forced the subject. She was really upset, obviously, and I brought her home. But she did a fine job keeping it together for the baby. I really didn't want to leave her in that state, so I hung around and helped throw a dinner together. Showed her how to make ghetto garlic bread and made pasta. I found out she sings a French language song to her daughter, and I was a little smitten with that. However, I also noticed when looking in on this that Sherry actually has some of my son's hand-me-down baby furniture, which really brought home just how absolutely messed up this situation really is. When I went to leave, we gave a parting hug that went on for a few minutes, no words. Got a kiss on the cheek, and I kind of rode that high for the rest of the night. The enormity of my life right now, I can't even fully grasp. I didn't think it was possible to be filled with such hate and anger while also feeling that fluffy. 4 days later, OP gave us another update. Decided to do another update, though with things in my personal story starting to even out and normalize, I doubt I'll be doing any more in the future. I've sort of entered the fleeing stage personally. I don't know whether it's the selfish brain talking or the rational one, but I'm beginning to have doubts about remaining a father. I want to be a good man. I want to believe I have the strength and resolve to raise another man's child. I mean, I did have that resolve before. This betrayal, though, has warped parts of me and changed me a lot in such a short time. I'm becoming unable to wear a positive face about this. I've said it before. I'm well aware of my own genetic problems, and because of this, I've always made it a point, even from my hormonal teenage years, to do all I could to not have a child. I was responsible, careful, and thoughtful. I was never reckless. My STBX, on the other hand, was apparently wild, took no precautions, and as a result, had a child. So at times, it feels like I'm going to spend my life tied down, tied to one spot because of someone else's reckless behavior. I had no problem signing on to be a dad. As you've heard, I am quite proud and happy with the time I've been in my stepson's life. Let's be honest with ourselves for a minute. We all know what's coming next. The STBX is probably going to use him and my love for him to twist my arm and bend me to whatever she wants me to do. I'll never be able to move where I want to live. I'll never be able to live my life as I want to live it. This horrible woman will have me on strings, and I will be dancing to whatever tune she wants me to. If he had been my biological son, I would fight for sole custody of him and throw my entire weight into ruining her character. But as he is not my son, there's no way in hell I'll have these rights. Perhaps this is a passing feeling. Perhaps I'll feel differently tomorrow, but I'm just venting raw at the moment. Honestly, if there was a chance I could get full custody, I'd probably take it. This is the worst conversation I've ever had playing out in my head over and over again. In the process of writing this, I've gone back and forth between wanting to run and hating myself over that thought. In this complete hell, Sherry has been my constant partner. We have decided against the wills of some of the commenters and even against our own logic that we are now a couple. We will not be acting outwardly. We're going to keep everything quiet until we're sure it's working. We're both adults and we both live alone, so it shouldn't be some crazy jumble to keep it secret. Ironically, we're behaving as though we're committing an affair ourselves. I've discussed the troubles of being a divorced stepdad, and she's offered me her take on it. She told me that if she were in my position, she would do all she could to get as far away from this crazy family as possible because I have the option to. She lamented the fact that no matter what happens, because of Max, she'll be stuck around both him and my STBX probably for the rest of her life. Her suggestion to me, which is pretty much the conclusion I've come to, is not to make any more rash decisions until after I talk with my therapist 2 weeks from now. I went back to my apartment today and was surprised to find just how much stuff my ex has already moved out of there. It was a little depressing seeing it looking that empty, but it was also kind of a relief to know that she is leaving without a fight. My son is with his grandparents now, so the ex and I were alone and decided to have a cup of coffee and chat before talking about how we're going to divide up some of the more mutually owned things. Things were pretty polite, all things considered. For Sherry's sake, I figured I'd ask if Max had been in contact with her because he's been a ghost for the last 3 days and he really didn't leave Sherry anything for diapers or food. Max's folks are helping her and I will where I can. Anyway, she shows me her phone and she's got 4 missed calls from him and texts wanting to talk. She says that she tried to talk him into chilling out and facing the family because he'll have to eventually anyway, and from the sounds of it, he's probably gonna run. The STBX then asks how Sherry is holding up and mentions that she heard from her aunt that I've been around a lot. Not that I need to, but I explain how we're trying to support each other since we're going through it together and that Sherry is obviously pretty beat up from all this. In the middle of this, she just point blank says, "Whatever you're doing with her is none of my business, but I'm not stupid." The weirdness of being indirectly accused accused of an affair by the woman who cheated on me is pretty rich. I wanted to tell her off, but at the risk of causing issues with the divorce, my only response was to redirect the conversation back to dividing our stuff up. I'm down a TV, but she also took these ugly couches, thank God. I didn't want to be the one dragging them to the curb. Thanks for the support, folks, but that's pretty much all that's going on with me. A lot of internal arguments, doubt, and division. But at the end of the day, for now, I've got a sweetheart keeping me propped up while I'm keeping her propped up. Yeah, so I definitely missed something. This whole time I thought the kid was biologically OP's. In this case, I'm even more glad that he isn't obligated to pay any child support, and to be completely honest, I don't even know if I would want the weekend custody. I think that may be a bit of a hot take, but I'm just being honest. As for helping out OP's ex with the car and stuff, I wouldn't bother with any of that. A user named One Bad Shot said, "Never complain, never explain. You owe her no answers whatsoever about your private life. She long ago abrogated any obligations you might owe her. I am usually the first to tell people to exit the lives of their stepchildren. You are right to plan this out carefully and wait to make a final decision. I would point out that your continued relationship with Sherry means you are not fully free of this family, regardless of what you decide to do with your stepson. I wouldn't give your problems to my worst enemy. There are no right answers here. Do whatever you need to do to heal your soul from your ex-wife's vile betrayal." User Mr. Niz said, "Admit nothing to your STBX, nothing. A normal person would realize that they had no right to accuse you of anything at all in her position, having done what she did. Your ex isn't exactly normal, however. Don't expect things to be all unicorns and skittles with her going forward. The time will come when she turns on you. This is exactly why I still think the Sherry relationship rebound is a mistake, both tactically and strategically. Tactically, because she has the ability to add complications to your divorce. Strategically, because any long-term relationship shackles you to this crazy family for the long term. Maybe you should revisit the California plan after the divorce is finalized." A now deleted user said, "I've been following your story from the start, but never commented before. Your STBX is still having active sex with Max. You saw her phone. Did you check how many calls she made to him? She's a malignant narcissist, a wolf in sheep's clothing. She wasn't dragging the divorce out because she didn't know how. Now that she knows that you and Sherry are together, watch out. She will make up a story about how all this is a lie concocted by you and Sherry, and she's being punished because she came to Max's aid. You need to get ahead of her. Expose your STBX in front of her family. If for nothing else, she deserves it. She will throw you under the bus to keep her secrets. Don't believe me? Monitor her behavior now that she knows about Sherry and you." Another comment made by user Greninja00 said, "I think the kid could potentially be hers and her cousins. As you said, they were having sex for a long time. And you also mentioned that the dad is always out of the picture. Maybe you can look into that. Brother, you can be a good man or be a father, but after the child knows the truth, they won't see you as their father, especially with your ex-wife's manipulation. Why waste years? Go your own way. You've done way more than you were assigned to do. Good luck." Then about a week later, we got another update. To those of you who have been following my story so far, I feel obligated to continue telling it for as long as there are interesting things to tell. Get out your reading glasses, it's going to be a long one. It's been nearly 3 weeks since my D-Day and more than a month since my life began to radically change. I never really discussed what sort of order my marriage was in any of the previous posts, but as it is relevant to today's therapeutic typing session, I'll get into that just a little as I go on. If this is the first of my posts you are reading, the TLDR is as follows. I accidentally discovered via Facebook that my soon-to-be ex-wife was engaged in a affair with her cousin, Max. I informed Max's wife of the trouble and she went nuclear, exposing our partners. Through all this, Max's wife and I have begun casually dating. As it turns out, we're quite attracted to each other. I filed for divorce yesterday, went down to the courthouse and spoke with the bailiff and filled out the needed paperwork. My STBX and I, in an effort to end this quickly, have decided against lawyers and have agreed on who gets what with no mediation needed. We tried to go to the courthouse today and have her served immediately after I turned in the paperwork. We were trying to avoid the cop coming to her home or place of work to serve her. I'm usually pretty level-headed about things. STBX is also calm and collected, which is not at all how she normally is. She seems almost as eager as me to get it done. Turns out she can't be served in the way we wanted to save time, and so I had to drive her home to her folks. I asked her how things were going despite all this. Her facade breaks a little, and through some tears, she tells me she's doing fine with me gone and only really feels bad when my stepson starts asking for me or gets sad that I'm not around. She comes clean that she's actually been unhappy being married to me since before we even got married. She didn't resent me or hate me, she just wasn't in love with me anymore. Our sex life wasn't the best. We're both very active and people, but we stopped being on the same page a while ago and we both knew that. I like to pursue, I hate to be chased, she loves to pursue and hates to be chased. Something was bound to break and we had several talks in our marriage about this. For a while, we switched up our roles so we could both get what we wanted, but after a while, it just turned into me sacrificing my desires to only have sex in the ways she wanted to. Some of the things she wanted me to do I never really liked and never got better at, and seemingly out of spite, the things I was good at she spurned. Meanwhile, she would seldom if ever take my requests as time went on. In the middle of our relationship, we had a female live-in roommate that we had a mutual attraction for, and under a strict set of guidelines and rules, she became someone we frequently had encounters with. For a time, that put a band-aid on things. The STBX and I were a good team. We're good at communicating our finances, and we're good at parenting as we make sure to never undermine each other and always present a united front. We enjoy the same movies, we're both artistically inclined, I a writer and she an illustrator. We had a million things in common that made us best friends, a good team, but the sexual problems were always there. While this third woman was in the relationship, that tension was gone and we worked perfectly together as those frustrations and needs were met by a third party. Eventually, this third woman moved out and ended things with us on good terms, mostly because she wanted a boyfriend and no guy would go in for a setup like that. It was around this time that Max and Sherry moved into Max's parents' second home. For a few years, they had been living in her home state until he lost his job. The STBX says it was then that Max reestablished contact with her. They began meeting up just as normal cousins at first, but one day she decided to vent her frustration, probably an invitation, about her sex life, and they started having an affair. They would only meet up around family gatherings and use excuses to vanish. A few of these I'm remembering not being able to find her. We got married at this time, so I can only assume it happened at my own wedding. At this point, I really don't feel like listening to this, and the STBX mentions that she is now seeing a therapist and wants to treat me like her priest in confession. Everything concerning their affair I was hearing for the first time. I guess it's good that I know the truth, but seeing as it impacts my life in no way, there's really no point for me to be hearing it. She also tells me that the out-of-state aunt who died and that she cried for a week over was actually her crying after Sherry called her to happily inform her she was pregnant. That means at one point I was actively holding my wife and comforting her as she cried over another man. I feel more betrayed now than I did when I discovered the texts. This was after a weekend where I got to spend 2 whole days alone with my stepson. I had such a good time, and he did too, as it's the longest time we've been together since D-Day. He's 6 and likes Minecraft, so I got a console version so we can play split screen. He told me he misses me but loves seeing his grandparents every day. They spoil the heck out of him. So after this great weekend of video games and playing catch, typical dad stuff, I'm really positive about staying a dad until she drops all this new info on me. I've got to be real. I'm finding the whole idea of having to be around this woman for the rest of my life, voluntarily, something I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do. As a parent, I should be able to get over my own issues and keep a level head for the sake of the child. But circumstances being what they are, throwing in the towel becomes a more and more attractive idea. That, more than losing my wife, more than the betrayal, breaks my heart. I'm going to see him again Friday night and we'll see if I can still fight through this. On the Sherry front, I'll keep it fairly brief as this is already way too long. Max stopped calling or taking calls from her 4 days ago, and it turns out he's moved in with his boyfriend. He has a boyfriend. She is going to file for divorce before the week is over and consider her next move. Her brother arrives in 2 days to talk with her and stay for the week. With Max's parents' permission, we've changed the locks on the house because, as rumor has it, Max has been using what? I don't know. But all the same, it's better to be safe. I installed a new chain and a deadbolt. He's never been known to be violent, but he's never been known to vanish for days on end, with the rumor being that he's into drugs now. When it comes to my relationship with Sherry, we are quietly pursuing a romantic relationship. We're both equally aware that we could just be dealing with our trauma and that these feelings might not be 100% real or lasting, but if I can be allowed to be vain for a moment, it's the best sex I've had in my life. I've never been more physically attracted to any of my previous partners, and I find myself daydreaming about her toward the end of the workday. I don't think I've ever had such a strong desire for someone before, and all told, she tells me it's something mutual. I've been back to work this week, and both days she stopped by to bring me dinner she made, and that's damn near the cutest thing anyone's ever done for me. Once again, I feel like life is beating the shit out of me at the same time that everything is going right. Man, that detail about how OP realized that she was comforting his ex because she was sad her cousin had a child with another woman is just defeating. Just when I feel like the story can't get any worse, it's like a new layer gets peeled just to reveal so much more. Anyway, this video is nearly an hour long at this point, and I don't want to drag this out much longer, so I will have to be cutting this story up into 2 parts. There is still a lot of content from OP. I believe there are at least 5 more posts that we need to go through. I will likely be uploading part 2 to this the day after this video goes live. Once it is up, I will add a link to it in the description as well as in the comments.